Hello everyone and welcome to Just Us 3, Series 2, Episode 3. This week we'll be discussing the sexualisation of teenage girls and the issues surrounding it. How are you both?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. We're all back in Sheffield now, all moved into our new student houses, so it feels a bit weird being across the corridor from Hannah recording this episode.
Yeah, just so far away.
Quite funny, to be fair. You could just bop round halfway through the podcast.
I mean, we did discuss doing it in the same room, but I think it makes it easier for the editing, Hannah said, in terms of
Yeah,
you could hear an echo in the background because I don't know how close your rooms are, but you could just hear each other. That'd be funny.
Yeah, I don't think I can hear anything from here, but sometimes you can hear when people are on the phone, so it depends how loud we get.
So as Katie mentioned, we'll be discussing the issues of sexualisation surrounding teen girls, and the inspiration for this podcast came from Madison Brown, and she did a YouTube video, kind of what we're basing on, about the sexualisation of teen girls and how basically in today's kind of patriarchal society, young girls are often sexualised. And we're basically going to just be discussing the issues surrounding that. And she did an amazing video on it. So I know Katie will put it into the podcast description. So
you know the drill by now.
Yeah.
I highly recommend it. But so we'll just get off into that. So what are your kind of opinions on it? Do you guys have any thoughts initially to kind of get the ball going?
Yeah, so I really enjoyed the video, and I, like Liv said, I'd recommend anybody going and watching it. And I was actually surprised that I hadn't come across it sooner, because obviously it came out when that Vogue cover with Billie Eilish first was published. And yeah, I'm just surprised I didn't come across it. It has so many views, and rightly so. And I'm a bit disappointed that I hadn't seen it sooner, because it was so thought-provoking. And in terms of one of the first points it's made is about youthfulness and the fact that youth is the pinnacle of beauty, and the younger you look, the better. And it just makes you think, until you hear somebody saying those words, it doesn't really click in your mind that that is the case in society, but it really is.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen bits of the video and I thought it was really interesting what I watched, especially things like the schoolgirl sort of thing that people look for. I didn't even realize that was basically not great until I watched the video, because then I thought, oh, that actually is quite creepy that we sort of think of the whole sexy schoolgirl stereotype. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting, and I think it definitely helped educate more on an area that I've not really read much about or heard much about. But yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I was the one who was like, guys, we need to do a podcast on this. But yeah, it was for me, obviously you girls know I absolutely adore Billie Eilish, and I saw it and probably slightly clickbaited it because I was like, oh, what's this? And then obviously watched it fully, and it really does cover a lot of topics that you wouldn't think about. You don't really realize that young girls are highly sexualized, and there is obviously history in that. There's history in the sense that young girls from the age of 13 were basically sold off to get married. That's that's history. That's in our history. And it's still quite scary that even in today's society, girls are still really sexualized. So yeah, I found it really, really interesting. It was such a good video. It's like I keep saying, go watch it.
Building on from that, you saying about the experience of young girls, the point that Madison made about the fact that most females experience catcalling when they're in their teens rather than as adults. And I don't know, that really hit home for me, because you don't really think about these things, and that we've experienced these things from such a young age that now as 20 and 21-year-olds, you just think how many years have we experienced it? It's actually horrifying to kind of look back and think, oh my goodness, it's been so many years since we were first exposed to it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think Like I saw on, I think it was Twitter earlier this week, that apparently they're trying to get catcalling made into its own crime. So at the minute, it doesn't actually fall under anything, I don't think. But yeah, I thought that was quite interesting because, like you said, you are exposed to that at such a young age, and it's almost like no matter how you dress when you go out, you might have that, and it's horrible, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's
yeah.
especially important that catcalling is being criminalized, because a lot of people use it to trivialize public sexual harassment. So obviously there are different forms of sexual harassment, and some are considered a lot worse than others, which obviously isn't fair because everyone's experiences are valid. But in terms of that now being criminalized, I think is such a big step in the right direction. And if we can keep like pushing and following on from that, then hopefully big changes will follow.
Yeah, definitely. It is, it's sad that young girls are going through that. And, I'm not saying it's not older women, but majority of young girls are, catcalled. And it also comes to this, like it mentioned in the video that Madison mentioned about how young teen girls feel this need to like dress to feel sexy and act sexy and almost dress a lot older. When I say older, when you're older, you can generally dress a bit more sexier than when you're younger. And a lot of young girls feel that. And it's quite sad that, it's the case that at the age of 13, young girls are wanting to grow up so fast when they should just be enjoying their, like, being a teenager, doing silly things that teenagers do, not like, that pressure to feel sexy. I don't know, like it's sad, isn't it, really?
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
that pressure definitely existed when we were that age. So I can only imagine how it is now with social media being what it is. It's probably got 10 times worse for the 13-year-olds in today's society, because obviously they feel like there's this rush to grow up and become the women that they see on social media, and it causes them to have real self-esteem issues.
Mm.
Yeah, and just like a side point that I've just thought of, like off the top of my head, do you think that sexualization of younger women trying to look older comes from or derives from historical times? Like, when you watch shows like Bridgerton and they turn 18 and they're just sort of like, well, yeah, the diamond of the season, that like all the guys, all the older men want the younger women. Do you think maybe that's something that's just sort of ingrained in our history?
Probably because obviously women, so it comes from like a very, like, to get to the nitty gritty, a woman is seen as being a woman as soon as she starts a period and as soon as she can have children. And it probably does stem from, well, the younger that they are, the more kids they can have, and etc. And it's also kind of in history, this is me getting my history head on, but like if you remember in history, like people didn't live as long. Like we live a lot longer now. So obviously they were trying to get girls pregnant younger because they didn't live as long. But yeah, it's also slightly patriarchal in the sense that older men do look down on younger women and highly sexualize them, because when they're older, they're not seen as prosperous as bear givers. So bear givers, children bearers.
Bear givers. Yeah, and I just thought that it would be quite interesting, really, to
Yeah, I
think
agree.
about.
And as soon as you said about TV shows, I instantly thought of Bridgerton, obviously being a period drama. That's especially relevant in the case of like Daphne, and I can't remember his name, that really creepy man in Bridgerton. Oh, who made
Oh
my
yeah,
skin crawl, the one who
Mr. What was
what's
his name?
name?
I remember.
Everyone, I feel like everyone listening will know if you've watched Bridgerton, the really creepy one that gets beaten up. But talking of like TV shows, it's not just about period dramas, it's also about other TV shows that don't portray the monotony of teenagers' lives. So instead, people are led to believe that young people live these really interesting lives and they should be doing things that are too ahead of their time. So, like clubbing, drinking alcohol, taking drugs. And an example that Madison referred to in her video was Euphoria. I haven't watched that myself, but the examples I just gave, she referred to them. So I'm assuming there's a lot of references to that in terms of like younger people. And I totally agree with that you see people on social media and in TV shows and you think, oh, is that what I should be doing?
Yeah.
And I personally when you're younger, you feel the pressure to act older than what you are. But I never felt obliged, thankfully, to be drinking alcohol and clubbing. Like, I was of the opinion that I'd just wait my time. I don't know how about you two, and whether you felt the influence from TV shows.
Yeah, definitely. Well, from where I grew up, everyone was having like fake IDs and trying to get into clubs at like 15. So yeah, I do think there's that pressure, you know, it does stem into that like, yeah, it's definitely something to do with TV programs. I think they like to make it out to be, I don't know what I'm trying to say. I have no idea.
No, I know what you mean. That they make it out to be this ideal life when it's not. And looking back, we should probably be grateful. I mean, I'm assuming it's the same for you, Han, that you didn't feel the need to do that earlier than what you did. But I kind of feel grateful that I
Yeah,
didn't rush.
Yeah.
yeah, me too. And I think, like, I'm just trying to think of an example off the top of my head. Because even a film like High School Musical, like I remember seeing like Troy and Gabriella and thinking, oh gosh, I want that in a few years. And I was literally like 10. And it's just like you there is this pressure to have an ideal relationship, but really that it's so far fetched from reality, I suppose. And I mean, I don't know. I know people that did feel pressured like that and acted on that pressure, but personally, like I agree with you, Katie. I'm grateful I didn't.
Another point that Madison makes is that young people see acting older as a form of sexual liberation. And actually, the title of the video is saying that you're 16, you're not sexually liberated. It's not possible for you to be sexually liberated because you shouldn't have a sexualization, because you shouldn't be doing those things at that age. And I thought that was kind of a really interesting point, because I don't know, I've never considered that because you're of a young age that you don't actually have a sexualization, but she kept repeating that and it was really hard hitting.
Yeah,
Mm,
it is
yeah.
interesting. Like, it's interesting, especially with Billie Eilish, how she was almost thirst trapped when as soon as she turned 18. And you know, when you think about it, like the idea of glowing up is when, you know, a girl is seen as like getting more sexy and being more attractive. And like I like really it's just a girl growing up, if that makes sense. It's not actually her being sexually liberated. Does that make sense? Like, it's sad that kind of the whole idea of glowing up is the idea of a girl being more sexually liberated or is more sexy or whatever. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. And you know what's just come into my head? Have either of you seen Stranger Things?
Yeah.
No.
You know, well, the actress Millie Bobby Brown, I'm pretty sure she's 17. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think she's 17 or is just turning 18. And at the start of the series, I think she's probably about 13, maybe. And as the series goes on, you know, you can tell there's more makeup there. And like now, like I guess a lot of people probably think about this whole sexualization thing, but that's another example, really. Like Billie Eilish, it's just someone growing up.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because obviously when you're so young, I'm trying to think back to how I acted in terms of like the way that you are when you're 16 and your use of social media. Like, another thing in terms of like thirst traps. So another point that Madison made was that people try to make out that their thirst traps are a form of female empowerment and they're sexually liberating. But when you're under 18, this isn't the case, and that there is a very fine line between feminism and sexualization, because a lot of people think that them wearing minimal clothing on social media is them taking control of their body and their sexualization, which in some ways I agree with. But then Madison made the point that if you're doing it when you're underage, then that's not you being a feminist. That's kind of them playing up to the audience that they know that they're going to attract from that. That in some ways, when Madison was speaking, I didn't really agree with some of the things that she was saying. I totally agree that some girls do play up to the fact that they're going to gain attention from what they post. But then I think that some girls are very harmless in what they do, and that they're not doing it for the attention. It's just difficult, isn't it? Because you don't know what people's motives behind posting actually is. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah.
I kind of went on a tangent there, but basically just thirst traps. It's difficult to know people's motivations behind them, I think.
Yeah, and I guess it is like you said, it's a fine line between feminism and sexualization. Because people might be doing it for body positivity, and you just don't know, do you?
Yeah, I think it's hard. I think, especially with the rise of TikTok and everything, young girls, I'd hate to grow up being a teenager these days, because I just think there is so much that it's so easy to fall into that. Does that make sense? Like, there's predators out there, let's face it, and it's an awful reality that will prey on young women, and it's just so it's just awful. And I think today there should be, in like sex education or whatever, that there should be talks about that, about how we can keep younger people safe. Because people are saying, oh yeah, don't do this, don't do that, but there needs to be more safeguarding of young people in general to keep them safe online, because it is so scary how easy someone can manipulate someone who's much younger. It's terrifying.
Unfortunately as well, I think especially with TikTok, that's not something that we grew up with in our teenage years. But when you have minimal clothes on, you are then playing into that algorithm, because just think, when you go onto TikTok, how many girls you see on there with minimal clothing on, that is what the algorithm wants, and they're the videos that are pushed. And I think it's really sad, because some girls know that if they sort of, like Madison referred to, like shake their ass on TikTok is what she said, they then know that they're going to get that attention, they're going to get the clout, and they're going to get the following, which is really sad, because again, it's making young girls feel like they have to conform to that when they really don't.
Yeah, definitely. What do you think, Anne?
Yeah, I agree. I think, especially like Katie said, with the algorithms, it is a bit of a shame that there's no sort of way that young people are stopped from seeing that content, because I think we've talked about this before with social media. I think when you're really young, it can be quite easy to be influenced by things that might not always be the right thing. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it comes to this, like, it's easy to ignore kind of thing, and it's easy, like out of sight, out of mind, with the like thirst traps and things. I think people don't quite pay attention to it enough. I don't know if you agree, but that's
especially when it comes to comments that are made. Like, it's very easy for people to send things to their friends without you even knowing that they've done that. And again, it plays into, like, don't mean to get really serious, but in terms of like pedophiles and stuff like that, they then share them on, and I'm sure there are communities that we don't know about, we don't want to know about, that it's very easy for content like that to be shared and circulated easily. Especially when on TikTok, I think unless you change the settings, like, your videos can be shared. So young girls, if they've just got the app and posted something, then anyone can share it unless you choose for them not to, which I think in a way it should be the other way around, that once you join an app, then you can choose for it to be shared rather than it being the other way around.
It
could be quite problematic.
Kind of like going off onto a different topic now, but obviously I've mentioned, and we've all mentioned, about Billie Eilish. Kind of what's your opinion on, like, Billie Eilish? Obviously we all know the Vogue cover. We're all journalism students, so we've all seen it. Personally, I fangirled over, because I think it's an amazing cover, and I think she's amazing for not being afraid to consistently, like, change herself and stuff. But what was your opinion about the cover and kind of her message behind that?
I personally really liked it. I thought the story behind it, about her not wanting, like, men or people who were older to see her body before she was 18, I think that was a really, really nice message, to be honest. And I think, when you're an adult, you do have more control over what you do. And I think waiting for that sort of control, or being able to sort of express yourself, not more, because I guess she could have done it before, but I think with the right reasons behind it, I think it was a really, really good cover. But yeah, what did you think, Katie?
Yeah, I totally agree. I second everything you just said there, Han. But I think it's amazing. And I think everyone can take something away from the power and control that she portrayed. And you can take that into all areas of your life, that you do things on your own terms and you shouldn't do it because somebody else wants you to. And yeah, I just think it was really inspiring. And I'm sure everyone feels the same way about it. And she did it on her terms. And yeah, I think she's a great role model for young girls.
Yeah, and to be honest, just another point, she looks absolutely amazing on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, she looks great.
Yeah, it came after, because obviously I followed it for some time because I absolutely adore her. She got slated quite a lot for having, and this is quoting, a mom body, because she's just slightly more curvy or has different curves to what the ideal woman is currently in today's society, which we've spoken about. But that was kind of her going against them and saying, look, this is how I look and I can still be sexy, and this is, it's fine, it doesn't matter your body size or anything. And I think she was so powerful and showing a great form of feminism in that sense, and just taking control and reclaiming her own body as both an adult but as such a young woman who's so strong. Sorry, that's my whole
I just feel like it's so sad that she had to cover up her body out of fear that she was going to be sexualized and objectified in the first place. Like, as a minor, that shouldn't have even been a concern in her head. All she should be worried about is making music, doing what she loves. But she had to think about so many other things while doing that. And it's just such a sad society that we live in nowadays.
Yeah, because even with I think I don't want to name. Oh no, I'm sure it'll be fine. I don't think I'll get in trouble. But that show, The Voice. So it's going a bit off topic, but I know someone who I'm not going to name who got approached and was asked to audition, I think. And when they kind of just make it out like it is based on pure looks, and it doesn't matter what anyone looks like, it is just about the voice. But it's such a shame when you actually know that a lot of things are off looks, really. They just sort of paint it out not to be. But it is sad that most things in society do come down to looks eventually.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it is. It's sad, like, leading on from that, and obviously with Billie Eilish and stuff, it was, I don't know if you've seen it, it's been on Twitter and I'm not too sure about it, but it's about is it Free Britney? That was a massive thing with Britney Spears, that obviously when she was younger she was highly sexualized. As an interview, and I remember watching it, and it makes me feel uncomfortable that she was only 17 at the time. He was saying something about her breasts. If you've watched it, you'll know this guy asking her about her own breasts, and
that's awful.
She's only 17, and it just shows, like, in many ways that people like Britney Spears did things so Billie Eilish could be able to do a cover like that. And let's face it, in the noughties, if we all go back to the noughties and back to like the end of the 90s, that the low waist, having your stomach out, all that kind of thing, women were so sexualized back then, if you really, really think about it. So yeah, it's kind of like you were saying, Hannah, it's so based on looks that, if you think about everyone that's made it celebrity wise, let's face it, they are nice looking. You know what I mean? So it's quite sad. I don't know if that was a bit on a tangent, but yeah, it's sad that Britney Spears had to go through that and a lot of other things, and yeah.
Gosh, that's so bad though. Imagine being a 17-year-old and having a question about your your breast. I can't imagine that.
Leading on from what Liv said, Madison actually did refer to Britney Spears in her video. She did put a little clip in there actually, and did refer to that interview. So yeah, that links in nicely with the schoolgirl trope, because obviously early on in the noughties, that was kind of where it began. Obviously it did occur a lot earlier than that, but it kind of reached a peak in the early noughties. And this popular fetish is deeply rooted in paedophilia, which is obviously awful and not something that people should be getting involved with. But then at the same time, why should you have to change the way you dress so that somebody else can't act in a certain way? It's like how the saying of, it's not what you should be teaching young girls, you shouldn't be teaching us to cover up, you should be teaching the boys not to look. And in school settings, I think this can apply to a lot in terms of school dress codes, which we'll come on to shortly. But obviously we see this schoolgirl trope in the media, anime, music videos, photo shoots, and even Halloween costumes. So I'd be interested to know what you two think of it.
Yeah, I agree with you, Katie. I was just thinking about my own school experience, and because I went to a religious school, we wore really long skirts, because like pretty much down to our ankles, because they were seen as too sexualized. Like you had to pretty much have your ankles covered. Which you think that's kind of mad to say. This was how old was I? Probably like 16. So it's not very long ago. But I know obviously this is the idea about having short skirts, but that's in a different sense, that you can't even show your ankles and stuff, and you've got to cover up, and girls have got to wear long skirts. But it was all right for lads to, like, you know, walk around and be lads and have the tie not done up or whatever. But girls had to like have the hair tied up, be completely plain. And yeah, it is I know it's on a different side of it, but I don't know, to me, yeah. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm making any sense this episode.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think sort of on the same topic about the schoolgirl sort of fantasy, if you will, I think even like thinking back to what you said about Britney Spears before, I'm pretty sure it's the music video, I want to say Hit Me Baby One More Time. And I think that is set in a school, and she is wearing like a schoolgirl outfit, and it's meant to be like that sort of thing. But I don't know, it just seems a bit wrong, really. But then I do agree with what Madison said, and she said, like, you know, she's guilty of it before, like. And I think, you know, especially in Sheffield, like there's a school disco night where everyone sort of wears like a school outfit, and you know, you have to have like your blouse, your tie, everything like that. And I mean, I've been before, and you know, because it was a club night, I just wore what I'd wear on a night out with a school blouse and a tie. So yeah, I think it. I don't know. I'm definitely guilty of not recognizing that as a bad thing necessarily, but it is quite interesting to hear that, you know, it's just something that's so deeply rooted in the media, and I think it will be for a long time, sadly.
And for anyone listening, something that Madison referred to was that when you type in schoolgirl and schoolboy on Google Images, that's all the evidence you need to look at the sexualization of the schoolgirl trope. That says everything you need to hear, basically, if you were to do that. I didn't do it, but I know exactly what it would come up with.
It's just sad. It's so sad that I think it frustrates me partly, and it's also tiring because it's such a long thing, you know, like in the list of things, there's so many things that young girls go through, and this is like another thing that's on top of that. And if we can kind of try and move away from that, I don't know how we can, but I definitely think there are ways to both educate young men, educate older men, you know, the older generations, and try and reach this point of understanding that we shouldn't be sexualizing young girls, and we should try and move away from that. So I don't know if you agree, but that's just kind of what I'm thinking.
I think now would be a good time to discuss our experiences of school dress code. So for me personally, I can't really remember much in terms of my sort of secondary school years from year 7 to year 11. But in terms of like sixth form as well, which is crazy to think, because at that stage we're very close to being adults, and in your final year of sixth form or college you are an adult. So the fact that they're still perpetuating those stereotypes and dress codes at that stage is baffling, that you're an adult and you're still being treated in that way. That I remember at sixth form we had sort of an office formal dress code, and there was one day I came into school and my skirt was slightly short, but you still couldn't see anything. And I came into the sixth form area and all of the staff members looked at me, and I could tell that they were just disgusted by what I was wearing, despite the fact that I was just wearing a skirt with tights. And they kind of in a way insinuated that they wanted me to go home and get changed. They didn't outright tell me to go and do that, but I did that because I felt so uncomfortable and like I was constantly being looked at. So yeah, I ended up going home and getting changed. And another thing was that I don't understand what the issue with shoulders was. Not that there should be an issue with anything, but in particular, we were never allowed to wear like strappy tops or tops with the shoulders out. It was at that stage where it was the trend with the tops with the shoulders cut out. And I never understood why that was a reason, because of all areas of your body that you would expect to be sexualized, shoulders isn't one of them. And I just don't understand why there was a need to cover them up.
Now, I was just going to say that it's so frustrating for you, Kate, to go through that, because in many ways that's disrupting your education. Like, just because you are a skirt that is short, it's actually their problem, the staff's problem. Like, they shouldn't be looking, and it's not your fault that it frustrates me because it's nothing to do with you. You weren't going out and being like, oh, I'm going to wear a short skirt because of this. And even if you did, so what? You're nearly 18. The fact that, you know, it's an issue to do with the school, and that the school teacher should be taught more properly than the issues that you had. Like, I think kind of you'll agree with me that I never had the same issue in terms of sixth form, because I was able to wear my own clothes, so it wasn't too bad. You know, like, they didn't really care what you turned up in, obviously. But yeah, that's so frustrating that you had to go through that, and they made you feel that uncomfortable that you had to go home.
Yeah, it wasn't pleasant. And looking back, I wish that I'd made a bigger point of it at the time, especially because they made a big point out of it because I was head girl at the time. So I was a representative of the school, and I do understand that. But then surely the issue wasn't with me, it was with everybody else, because why were they looking? I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
It
it
looks bad
frustrates
on
me.
them.
Yeah, it frustrates me because if I could go back, I probably would have said something now, being the more confident individual than I am now. That I am now. But yeah, that was a few years ago. We can identify that that was an issue, and I've moved on from it.
What about you, Hannah? Before I interrupted you.
Oh no, it's all good. I think, yeah, with my school it was a case that it was quite strict with uniform, and to be fair, that only really came in like the further I got through high school. I'd say when we started it was way more relaxed than when I left in year 11. But yeah, it was just the sort of, I say the usual, I don't know if every school was like this, but it was just the usual sort of, you had to have your skirt all the way down, you couldn't roll it up. Tie had to be done properly, you had to have your top button up at all times, couldn't take your blazer off unless you asked, which, you know, on a hot day you have 30 kids trying to ask can they take their blazers off at different
Yeah,
times.
I
It
completely
was,
forgot. Sorry
yeah,
to interrupt, but I completely forgot about that. And that is one of the biggest issues. We'll come back to that.
yeah,
Carry on. That
no, it was
problematic red flag.
awful. Yeah, I agree. And I think yeah, that was weird in itself. But yeah, I agree with Liv though. When I got to, because I went to college rather than sixth form, I, you know, it was just free reign really. I remember turning up on day one and seeing people with turquoise hair. I saw people with you know, black lipstick on, and I thought, oh my gosh, like what's going on here? By a week in, I was absolutely loving it. But my twin sister was going to sixth form, and the dress code was pretty much the same as what you've said, Katie, and it was just so limiting, I think.
Yeah,
But
definitely.
yeah,
It's do you know what I remember when I was at school, and I don't know if you had this, but we had a school uniform change that when we were doing PE and stuff, or like games or sport or whatever, um the girls had like skirts and stuff, so like we got a new uniform set for that. And like some girls obviously would like try and make the skirts a little bit short, which, you know, whatever, that's what they do. I wasn't I wasn't like that. But like, it was an issue if the girls maybe forgot the skirt, or they had to like wear cycling shorts instead. And that, I remember, oh my God, that being such a massive issue, that instead of them just wearing the skirt with the skirt, they were wearing cycling shorts. People saying, you can't do this, you can't go out in that, you can't wear that. And what was really interesting is, so you could wear these skirts and skirts in like PE and doing stuff, but you couldn't wear it when you were in your lessons. So sometimes some girls would have like sports fixtures after, you know, like, so they'd maybe have had like
yeah,
games, and then they'll have a lesson, and then they'll have a fixture. And some of them would want to wear, or it might be a hot day, and they just want to wear that skirt, but they couldn't wear it because it was seen as an issue around other staff members.
That's a red flag as well.
Yeah.
Can we just take a moment that, yeah, these skirts were a little bit short, but for God's
But why are the staff looking? Why are they uncomfortable? I don't understand it. I don't.
It's mad that you can wear them whilst you're playing sport and you're like running around, but you can't wear them in it. Yeah. Lesson environment. I have that as so much of an issue, and I could keep ranting on about that. But yeah, that was one thing I remember really noticing in girls getting like detention, and it being a real thing if you forgot your skirt and you were having to wear like cycling shorts. Like, Jesus Christ, they're just cycling shorts, for God's sake.
I think a final point, before we either move on or wrap it up, is for me, I had to wear a white shirt at school. And on top of that, we had to wear a tank top and a blazer. So first of all, it was a red flag that we had to ask to take off our blazers and our tank tops, which is so weird in my mind. That in a classroom, why was it an issue? I can understand if you're walking around the school that you're trying to represent, but in a classroom, what issue is it causing to anyone?
Yeah.
Like when it's like 30-degree heat in the summer, or even like mid to late 20s, like I don't understand why we had to ask to do that. It's ridiculous. And as well, like when we, on the rare occasions we were actually allowed to take them off, the white shirts, I felt so uncomfortable wearing a white shirt because you could always, no matter the color of your bra, you could always see through it. And I remember specifically that it was such a hot day and I was in like an art and graphics class, and my seat was in the seating plan was right in the middle of the room, and I felt so uncomfortable sat there because I was thinking, oh my God, everyone behind me is looking at my bra, like they can just see it. And now I think everyone feels so empowered when people can see their bra, because we're not afraid like for people to see it and you think, yeah, I've got boobs, yeah, I need to wear a bra, so what? Whereas when you're like a 13-year-old sat in a classroom, you're like, oh my God, like nobody, I can't let anyone see it. It's nice that we kind of come a long way from that moment. Whereas now if I'd be sat in that classroom, I'd be like, yeah, you can see my bra, so what? What's the issue? You're the one that's looking at it, not anyone else. So yeah.
We wore jumpers, which I don't know if that's weird, but we were wearing jumpers and you'd have to ask, and yeah, it's mad. You just take your jumper off. I don't know. A lot of people didn't really care, but there would be the occasional teacher that would be like, you need to ask to take your jumper off, and you're like, do you want me to overheat? Like, you know, oh, it's mad. It's really, really crazy. But hopefully schools now let kids rightfully so, just take the jumpers off when they're hot, because that just seems like a human right. I don't see why it's an issue. But like you said, Katie, about having your shoulders out and stuff, I remember because I went to a religious school, and when we'd have like home clothes day, you couldn't like have your shoulders out. You had to have them covered, or you had to have a jacket, or some girls would like have to wait outside if like, because we used to have like morning meetings, so you couldn't do it. Oh, it was just mad. It was mad.
I think religious school or not, that's quite a generic experience. I mean, it was probably heightened because it was a religious school, but I, for one, didn't go to any religious schools throughout my whole time in education, and I still had those experiences, which is crazy. I think, I don't know, it'd be interesting to see whether anything's changed. I don't know anybody that's at a secondary school now at the stage where you have to wear a uniform. So I think it would be an interesting bit of research to do to see if that is still an important thing in secondary school, in the eye of secondary schools.
Oh, well, thanks everyone for listening, and you know, obviously go check out Madison's YouTube video and her channel, because she talks about some really interesting topics. And yeah, it's been lovely speaking with you too, as always. And yeah, have a good rest of the whole. Well, we'll probably do another podcast by the end of the holidays, but have a good rest of your holidays and hopefully enjoy the nice weather before it starts raining.
Oh, you too.
Yeah, thanks girls.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.